What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Outer Rim Radio. This is episode 5, and today we're going to be talking about the best relationships in Star Wars. And I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Ethan Odenthal. And, and of course, before we get into our topic, we always have some news to talk about, so let's get into it.
Yeah, well, as of this week, there's been a lot of news. Really controversial news, but news nonetheless. So first off, let's just jump into what we're gonna do today before we get into this news. Yeah, we're gonna talk about the top relationships. Well, I shouldn't say the top. We're just gonna go over some of the most iconic relationships in Star Wars. Today is Valentine's Day as we are recording this, so we are going to talk a little about the romance in Star Wars, but also I think it's important to acknowledge the family and friendship aspects as well. So Charlie and I, we're going to cover that today as well. So let's get into this news that none of us want to talk about. So Gina Carano, who played Cara Dune in The Mandalorian, was let go by Lucasfilm, which is pretty big news. There's been a lot of discussion on this, but I think the thing that is pretty much agreed on is that the character wasn't like left dead and dry. She pretty much was that character was already at a point where she basically was going in her own direction. It was told Mando, like, hey, I still want to help the galaxy and I still want to be a ranger and like do all this stuff.
Yeah.
I want to help you. But the first part is what I want to focus on. I want to focus on helping people, not just this kid. So I think with the position Gina put herself in, she was already expendable.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of what happened. I mean, you don't mess with the mouse to begin with.
Yeah.
That's just how it goes. You don't mess with Big Daddy Disney.
Yeah. And I also think that in terms of like more political stuff in general or anything, it's not even that really, but like I feel like Lucasfilm is more better about that than more of corporate Disney.
Oh yeah, I mean their whole thing is Star Wars is a pretty politicized form of media. It pretty much comes out and says how it feels about certain forms of governance and politics. Like
straight up.
Kind of the point. And like you can just go listen to George Lucas talk about that. But I just think even if no matter who was saying stuff like that, I don't think that character was in the position to make itself more expendable.
Yeah.
So, but let's transition from that because I don't think there's really anything Charlie and I are going to bring to this. Like,
yeah, right. I mean, the only thing that we could really discuss is if we want to talk about what they're going to do with that character, how they're going to write her off. But it's like
I think they're just not going to reintroduce her. I mean, it's an episodic story.
Yeah.
The way they ended it was pretty much just. I mean, they were all on the ship, sure. Yeah. But she had already pretty much said like she was going to go her own way after this.
Yeah.
So I can see, them just saying a report, like if they're like, oh, what happened to Cara Dune? We actually like that character. They're like, oh, well, she just went back to X planet and is just a ranger there and stuff like that. So
right.
I don't think they're going to kill her off on screen because they don't have to. It's an episodic show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's like no reason to like do that.
No, absolutely.
Just kind of move on. But anyways, the way more exciting news for this week
and happy news,
very happy news, was an Instagram post made by Ray Park where he posted a picture of basically the horns of Darth Maul's head, basically like for like makeup testing or whatever.
Yeah, and Ray Park is if you don't know, Ray Park is the original actor and continuing actor, I should say, of Darth Maul.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited to see what happens with that. I mean, he's in the makeup department. He's putting on his full gear. It's what we saw. I mean, he got a lot of hashtags. He put "Meet me on Dathomir."
Yeah.
Which that's crazy.
Yeah, "Meet me on Dathomir," Sith Life, Tal, and then he put Solo Maul, Ray Park, Darth Maul, Star Wars, Sith Life, Sith Rule. I think it's interesting that he tagged location as Tatooine though. On like the Instagram post, that was the other thing. I was like,
I mean, obviously that character does have ties with Tatooine. I
Right.
mean, he did die. He died there, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Old Ben killed him on Tatooine, and then
That's where we're
obviously
introduced to him too,
and
really.
that's what I was gonna say. It's his beginning and end. But I don't think Ray Park was thinking into that too much. Like
Yeah.
that seems I don't know. I would be pretty excited if he's either on Tatooine or Dathomir again for
Yeah.
this new Obi-Wan show, which would make sense considering it's the Obi-Wan show. But like we were talking about before the show, he tagged Solo,
Yeah.
which he's a pretty major character in there, but it's just very interesting to consider how we keep getting little snippets about
Yeah.
Darth Maul, and everyone loves Darth Maul. He's one of the most iconic characters. And I
Yeah.
think part of that is literally due to Ray Park, portraying him as this badass fighter. I mean, he's Ray Park is a martial artist. He knows like Shaolin Kung Fu, kickboxing,
Yeah.
wushu. The dude's insane. Uh, but oh man,
But yeah, I'm interested because like obviously I don't think that character even can go to Tatooine just like canonically if he's looking for Obi-Wan. Like as we see him in Rebels because he doesn't even know where until he does that thing with Ezra. I don't want to
yeah,
spoil it for Berg if he hasn't seen it, but and what gets him there.
yeah, because we do have the time skips and stuff like that. But I can see even if this is just the Obi-Wan show or if we're getting more solo content, like it's gonna
Yeah.
run parallel to it. So we'll see.
Yeah.
It's a lot of speculation, but it's very exciting.
Okay. Yeah. Good to know
Super
you
excited
saw it,
stuff.
Berg. Lit. You finished it. I'm glad you agree with my opinion that show's actually better.
Yeah, Rebels is better than Clone Wars, and especially in what we're about to talk about today. Although I really do like Anakin and Padme's relationship,
Yeah.
um, and I like Anakin and Ahsoka's relationship a lot. I think all of the Rebels characters, just the dynamics and the dialogue and the
Yeah.
characterizations that they're able to achieve in that show, it's just
Yeah. I feel like what show do you think Maul's gonna appear in?
Are you asking me or are you asking chat?
You. Do
I
you think
mean,
it's Obi-Wan or do you think
of the shows we know right now, that is the only show I could think of. I wouldn't be surprised if they gave him something else.
I'm
They've
thinking
kind of
about Andor
Andor would be
since
that's
they
actually
just
what I was
started
gonna
shooting
get
it.
on. Andor would be a really good one. I don't think it'd be Acolyte
So that's way
because
too early.
that's way too early. That's 50 years ago. Now, Andor would be a really good one because as of the arc we've kind of seen with Maul, is they've kind of been dropping him into separate stories
Yeah.
as kind of like this connector because he's the Sith, but he's also not the Sith
Sith.
because he has his
Yeah.
separation. So we'll see. I mean, it can't be anything pre episode one, just because he is really young.
Yeah.
As of episode one.
Right. And we know that he was pretty much like kind of just sheltered straight up and given away by Mother Talzin.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing really there that does that for him. I think Andor makes sense, especially if they're gonna have to deal with any like crime syndicate stuff, because that's where he is. And he mentioned in the post, "Meet me on Dathomir." So I think and the fact that show's actually shooting now.
Yeah, that is the most likely. I'm gonna 100%. That's a good point. I think we can expect it with Andor. It would be interesting to know where he is when he's making these these statements because he's Scottish, but they're shooting in the UK right now
Gotcha.
for the Andor show.
Andor's before Rebels, isn't it? It's like the same time frame.
I think it's right before. Take place 5 years. Hold on, let me find.
I imagine it's like
Take 5 years before the events of Rogue One.
Okay.
So before the battle. 5 years before the Battle of Yavin.
All right. Yeah, he could definitely be there, and that would fit him between Rebels and Solo. Because we know that. Oh,
Is he dead by that time?
I forget what year Rebels leaves off.
I think we should just do our research for the next episode. And
Yeah, probably.
This is going to be some mad speculation.
Yeah.
I think we'll find out more, Berg.
All Rebels is set between 5 BBY and 0 BBY before Rogue One and A New Hope. Regardless, I just think it's possible because it's before Rogue One.
Yeah. I mean, and again, that date that I provided is pretty speculative from what it seemed like. I don't think that's officially confirmed. I think that's where they're saying it will be about, because that's pretty much what they did.
Yeah.
Remember when we had all of our news, they were pretty much just like, oh, this is the time range we're thinking.
Yeah.
But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Anyways, on to the saddest news of the week.
Oh, yeah, actually.
According to Charles Soule via Twitter, Wet Bub did not survive the battle in Light of the Jedi.
our Gungan bad guy, evil villain.
Rest in peace. I opened Twitter to that, and I made a tweet from the account, and I was like, our fan Jake will be very disappointed that Wet Bub is no longer with us.
I know, it's sad because that was our only chance of getting our Darth Jar Jar equivalent.
Finally.
Which, I mean, we could fuck around, find out, see if it happens, but no, it's not. It's not going to.
Fuck around and find out. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Let's move on to our main topic then.
Yeah, let's move on to the main topic. As much as I want to talk about Darth Maul.
I know. I could talk about Darth Maul all day.
So yeah, we're going to talk about the relationships in Star Wars. It's a really broad topic, obviously, but like I said, we're recording this on Valentine's Day, and I think it's fun just to kind of explore this. I think we should start off with romance. And Charlie, I think you're going to take the bulk of this weight because I haven't watched the like Obi-Wan and Satan arc in a long time. I've only watched Rebels once, so
yeah, I think the one I'll do the worst on is Rey and Ben, but
I'll talk about that one because it's really interesting.
Yeah.
So obviously, of all the romances in Star Wars, the one that is the most iconic is Han and Leia.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much what they have tried to emulate a lot of the romances off of.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Charlie, how do you feel about that romance compared to some of the others in Star Wars? Like, let's use that as the baseline.
I feel like theirs shouldn't be the one you should necessarily try to emulate because just the way those characters are. I feel like they're both kind of hard asses in a sense. Like they're very like they're both like they're completely fine. Yeah, strong-willed, and they're completely fine just like talking shit about each other and telling like the other one to fuck off. And it's like it's kind of weird because in like the sequel trilogy, it's like they're basically almost divorced, but they still care about each other because they're just off doing different things.
Yeah, and actually, I think it's interesting how that all went because it really is just a product of their own trauma, right? Like,
yeah,
they got divorced because Han couldn't cope with his son going to the dark side,
right?
So I think I hear that a lot, and like anytime you look, like when I was doing research for this show, it was like, oh, the relationships of Star Wars, it's always the "I love you" line.
Yeah,
and it's like if you were in a relationship that was like Han and Leia, do you imagine how toxic that would be? Just like, I love you. I know. You just get nothing back. Just talking to a wall. Just getting roasted all the time.
And then you're frozen in carbonite.
Like, yeah, and then you're dead for 2 years, and then she comes save you. And it's a funny relationship just to look at because I think Star Wars inherently handles like romance pretty weak.
Yeah.
So the only reason I think most people jump to that and are like get tattoos of those quotes and like that's like, oh, what movie scene lives rent free in your head, right? Because you know there's all the incest stuff. I mean, you can talk about Leia and Luke for. We need more Sith relationships. I agree. Actually, give me a second. I'm going to talk about that. It's just really funny to look at like Han and Leia compared to like Anakin and Padme in whatever timeline you're looking in.
Yeah,
definitely Kanan and Hera.
Yeah,
who have like the only actual romance.
That's like that is my opinion. That is the best relationship in Star Wars because it's actually It's like a normal, healthy relationship for the most part.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, they both have trauma. They're both dealing with a lot of stuff, but like their relationship grows as they go. Where I feel like Han and Leia is very stagnant, and then like
Yeah.
Anakin and Padme, just because of their arcs as characters, like
Yeah.
they both degenerate as people the longer the relationship goes. But with like Ken and Hera, these is just a healthy relationship with really good characters who are constantly growing and changing. And that's one of the things I like about Rebels the most. I mean, we can just get into that with the family and the friendship aspect, but they're constantly growing, constantly changing.
Right.
Whereas I don't think that's portrayed well in how a real relationship works in Star Wars. Like, I think a Sith relationship would be really interesting for
I
many reasons, just because bad guys having relationships, these bad villains, they're stagnant characters, but did they not love? I mean, they talk about love and hate being strong emotions that both of which you embrace. And George
right.
Lucas literally fucking said that. Oh, this makes me mad. This makes me so mad. Okay, George Lucas has literally said that the Jedi, it's not that they can't have sex, it's that they can't form attachments.
Yeah.
So the Jedi are just pumping and dumping, running around, doing whatever they want. But the
Man,
Sith
said it like
would
the
be
stock market.
yeah, seriously, be the only characters who would embrace their love. Now it'd be pretty effed up love, I'm sure,
Yeah.
but at least they're embracing that. So I think that's something we need to see is like, how does love interact with the Force?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's interesting, and
Because there was like older canon stuff that, or like legend stuff that we talked about where, like how certain people get more attached or whatever.
yeah,
I think we were talking about like KOTOR.
yeah. So it really depends. I mean, this has to do more with like, I guess it's really just generic bonding, because I think there is romance between Jedi who had this, but basically they would form these bonds, and if they could become so strong that not only if one person felt pain, the other would feel pain, because their souls were literally connected through the Force. But if it was so strong, yes, Luke's married in canon. We'll talk about this in a second. It could become so strong that if one died, the other person would die instantly, like the moment they died.
Yeah.
So, which is pretty BA, but like the Force has changed a lot from what they've done in canon. So,
Yeah.
Luke is originally, he's married in canon, in Legends. I mean,
Yeah.
um,
To Jade.
no, that's changed a couple times.
Okay.
It's Mara.
Mara
Is her
Jade.
name?
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, Mara Jade, who is a badass, by the way, and one of the most wasted characters since they cut her out. But it was just very interesting to see like when Jedi were able to feel love, but now it's like they're going super into the no, Jedis have no attachments. Jedis have no attachments.
Yeah.
To the point where with Rey and Ben Solo, which some people think this is a romance, which it isn't. It's just dog shit writing. Looking at you, Disney. Literally in the Rise of Skywalker novelization, they make a point, like they insist on it, that it was not romantic. And they had to explain that it was a kiss of gratitude, acknowledgement of their connection, and celebration that they'd found each other at last. What does that mean? I don't even know how to address that. It's like, oh, I love you, but like someone I depend on, but I'm not attracted to, I wouldn't declare a friend. Someone who's tried to kill me for 3 movies. I don't know, man.
That was actually funny. I don't want to like stray us away from our main topic, but I feel like a lot of times there's a lot of Star Wars questions, and half the time the answer is it's just bad writing, or we haven't gotten there yet. Like the 2 common responses.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I think it was a sober hippie in our Discord. Uh, he like posted a video and he was like, "What do you think?" And it was like, it was talking about how Ahsoka's going to get rid of the Ahsoka show is going to get rid of like or split the Star Wars timeline or something.
Oh yeah. No, I saw that and I just went, what the?
Yeah, I was like, this whole thing like depends on things that don't really matter because they're just writing bad and we retcon things constantly in Star Wars.
Yeah, and that's kind of the problem with having a bunch of writers. Like that's I talked about it before. Like in terms of world building and like general fantasy, that's great. It really just establishes such a wide berth of thought that really expands your universe. But when it comes to something where you need like intimate relationships and dialogue that is constant and like threaded together, that's where the relationships really fall apart. Which is
Right.
like why you can have Anakin and Padme in the Clone Wars who actually have some semblance of romance and this back and forth that's witty and kind of feels like that Han and Leia kind of relationship in Star Wars that
Exactly.
is fun and interesting and witty and just you like to watch. And then you could have the prequels movies where it's just like, oh my gosh, he's using the Force to cut a pear to impress this woman. And I mean, they literally had to come out and be like, guys, it's not pedophilia. Here's the age ranges. I'm like, you shouldn't have to tell us that in a
It
movie.
shouldn't feel that weird.
And that's just what we've seen in Star Wars so much, right? Where like they have to come out and be like, oh, did you know this? And you're like, no, because you
No.
didn't fucking tell
Tell
us.
us.
It's like the Exegol thing in the sequels.
Yeah,
Like,
there
did
was
you
like
know
that
that on
tweet. It was
Exegol
like
they raised?
it was like yeah, the tweet where they're like all these people were raised on this planet and everything. And like yeah, it like started with like, did you know? And the people were just like, no, nobody did. None of this made any sense.
Yeah, did you know the Sith Eternal Fleet seen in Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker was created by Sith cultists on Exegol who indoctrinated Exegol's population with Sith values and raised and trained their children to become officers, mechanics, and soldiers of the Final Order?
Nope. No one did.
So, anyways, that's exactly why when I
Anyways,
watched the
Vader's going to
movie,
Exegol in the next comic, so that's neat.
yeah, that'll be interesting. I just like I think one of the things we can kind of just establish before we move on, and I want you to talk about Canon and Hera, and we'll talk about Obi-Wan and Anakin and Padme and the cartoons. Is like one of the reasons I think all the cartoon relationships do so much better, um, is because they give them time and space to grow together
Yes.
and really talk and grow the relationship. Where it's like everything just feels so rushed in these movies to the point where you're like, why is this even here? The only characters that actually genuinely have a movie relationship that is solid and feels strong all the way through is Han and Leia. And that's because we literally get to know these characters from the first 15 minutes of the first movie all the way to the end.
Yeah. And it's kind of
So
funny when they go and rescue Leia basically like they like hit it off right in this like really weird way where they're just literally yelling at each other like they're arguing in agreement
the
of like what
first
to
thing they
do.
do.
And it just goes on throughout and it just sets the tone perfectly for them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Charlie, I want you to talk about Obi-Wan and Satan because I think this is one of those ones that is
Yeah.
the most interesting to think about, like how he
Well, yeah, because
almost
I think it's the one we've seen the least about, or like
yeah,
of
and
just.
people are always just saying, would he have left the order for her?
And I mean, I think the obvious answer is yes because he literally said he would.
Yeah, I mean
He's like, if
he
had
is,
you given the word, I would have left the Jedi Order.
and that's kind of interesting. I think Obi-Wan is a great example about how relationships can amplify a character.
Right?
Because if you look at Obi-Wan, think of everything that he's had and lost. I mean, every type of relationship we have today, like we're going to talk about here, you can bring Obi-Wan into these because I mean, friendships, Obi-Wan and Anakin, iconic.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's his master, but there's this friend, and they call each other like they were brothers, and he truly loves him. And we just get this. Obi-Wan has this constant arc of being attached to someone and then losing them because he he's committed to the Force. Now,
Yeah.
Satine was obviously the person who took him the farthest from, not from the Force, but like the
Leaving the Jedi.
consideration of leaving the Jedi. And I don't think that would have necessarily been a bad thing for him. It's just so interesting to think about how much he had lost and how much they continue to just basically like, oh, Obi-Wan life sucked more. Did you know this? He lost this. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
thanks for making me sad. So I would not be surprised if they give us more sad boy hour shit in this new Obi-Wan show when it
Oh,
comes
I
out.
foresee it.
Oh, he's just such a sad character in that regard.
Yeah. He but I like the character a lot just because he is like resilient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Berg, I'm gonna backtrack just to answer your question, not answer your question, but like address your comment. Yeah, Ben and Ray is the most forced relationship in Star Wars. I agree. Like
Yeah.
I 100% agree. And I actually think both of those characters are very interesting. I think they tried. You had all these different writers trying to take them different directions each time they got a movie. So we're trying to force them one way and then the other and then this way, and it goes
Yeah.
nowhere. So we're left with just a sour taste in our mouth because we're just like, oh well, these characters, they should be going this way. I've watched this first movie, and then you get to the third movie, and you're like, okay, are they in love? Oh, he just dies. He just sacrifices himself for her, and you're like, why?
Yeah.
And I think for what they were trying to do on paper, it actually makes a lot of sense because their ideas, like both of these characters, were very troubled by their past and stuff they couldn't control, and even going off of what they were saying, like, oh, it's not a romantic relationship. It was like they truly needed each other to set each other on the right path. Uh, I think when you kind of look at what those characters and what they're trying to do, that's 100% correct. But like we were just saying with Han and Leia, Obi-Wan and Satine, Anakin and Padme in the Clone Wars, you needed time to establish that.
Yeah. Well, and it's like that's another huge issue I have with the sequel trilogy, and I feel like it's a really weird one that no one really talks about. Is that just like canonically, all those movies are so close together in the timeline. Like it's literally like 2 years. It's 3 movies,
Yep.
and it's like so much of
I
what
mean,
happens is just like on a such smaller scale. Like the only reason the scale seems large in those movies is it's almost just literally because they have the capability of destroying planets again, and that's
yep.
like kind of it. It doesn't feel like there's anything more to the universe than just let's stop them from blowing stuff up because the bad guys are back.
Yeah, it's the problem. How long is Rebels in terms of its timeline? Okay, it's 5 years, right?
Yeah,
And even in that expansion of time, like Kanan and Harrow, they just established so much of a relationship.
yeah, and I
And kind
think
of what
it.
we were
I was gonna say what I think really helps is the fact that that whole crew. We'll talk about this more later. Is like that whole crew is basically a family, and they're just kind of forced into this mom and dad position.
which they accept
Yeah,
and then really grow together. And like I obviously, as you can see in the background, if you're watching this, or you see on the thumbnail if you're opening the video to go listen, I mean, the background of the shot, like they're not kissing, they're just hugging each other and looking off into the distance. And in a weird way, I feel like half of the shots are just like weird make out shots to force
yeah, that
relationships
was
in
the
the
problem I
movies.
had trying
We couldn't
to.
find thumbnails. It's like, oh, now you think about it, it's like, yeah, these are characters who like they genuinely display their affection. They have healthy boundaries towards each other. They grow. They have conflict, sure, but they're resolving it. And I just think if you were going to go watch anything in Star Wars to really like, how do I get the best? I don't know where this. If you're gonna watch anything in Star Wars to say, I want to see the best characters in Star Wars. I want characters that grow on me. I want characters that make me laugh. Characters that make me cry. Characters make me smile. Go watch Rebels. There's no reason you shouldn't watch Rebels if that's what you're looking
Yeah,
for. Because in terms of Star Wars, the best relationships across the board are in Rebels.
yeah, and then Chopper being a war criminal.
Chopper is a war criminal. That is true.
He's my favorite.
And He used to be one of the best characters. And oh gosh, what's that game? I'm forgetting the name of now.
I don't know.
It's a mobile game, mobile Star Wars game.
Oh, Galaxy of Heroes?
Yeah, he used to be.
Yeah, because every turn he just sends a random buff on your team. Yeah.
And just throws rocks at people.
Yeah. It's really funny when you kill a Sith Lord with a rock.
That describes Rebels, though.
Yeah.
Let's move on and talk about. No, you know what? Let's talk about. I want to touch on this one last time, and then we'll move on and talk about.
Here we go.
I just want to reiterate the reason why Anakin and Padme is so cringy when compared to the Clone Wars. It's the same way Ben and Rey was so cringy. They are literally it was like all these writers had never been in a relationship before, at least a healthy one, and just wanted to force this. Like, look, he loves her. He's giving her gifts and telling her how much he wants to spend his life with her. And it's like, have you ever seen an actual couple, or at least watched a romantic comedy, or like watch a romantic movie? If you don't know what romance is, don't write romance.
Yeah.
And I think Clone Wars, you have a variety of writers who really understand characters, and they're not forcing things. They're giving them the time to grow, and they're also just not like giving you lines that are super direct. It's like basically Anakin 90% of the movie is like, I want to marry you and make babies with you, and you're like, you're 16. Chill out. You're not even a Jedi Master. You're barely even a Jedi Knight. So let's chill it out, homeboy. Like,
yeah.
What the fuck is going on?
Yeah, like I said, they're like, we've talked about this before, but literally Anakin, because they're trying to push like the whole romance thing, and especially episode 2, it is so badly like just apparent that they're trying to push it, and there's no subtlety. It's just
absolutely.
Like, yeah, let's just keep pushing this, and it's just like these are just really weird lines. Nobody talks like this. And it's just,
you could already tell, like, based off of the actors' body movements, and or even if you want to get in the Clone Wars, like, even without their own dialogue, like, they're portrayed as if they would love each other. Just like chill out on the dialogue, dude. It's about subtlety, as we see with Kanan and Hera. It's like you don't need them to speak to each other at the end to know that they love each other. It's just you see it. It's how they act. It's how they make choices. It's how they think.
Yeah,
which is very similar to what we see.
Yeah, they constantly try to protect each other in weird ways throughout the show of like, no, we just have to do this alone. I can't risk losing you. Like, they do that constantly, like, especially whenever, like, stuff revolving Maul is involved. Like, anything around that, or like, this is dangerous. It's just going to be me and Ezra. It's like, they're very good about that in that show. Of like why the characters are the characters that are going on any specific like little mission or anything they do. Anyway,
they just take the time to really establish what those characters are about. Which, moving on, we want to talk about family.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons. Moving on in the family, we're talking about the Mandalorian. That's one of the reasons Din and Grogu, or Mando and the artist formerly known as Baby Yoda, have such a good relationship, and it's so believable. I mean, there's literally no dialogue, right? I mean, obviously we get it from Din, but because of Grogu's actions, you know he loves Din. You know you don't have to question like, oh yeah, I think he looks at him like a father figure or protector. You just know.
Yeah.
You just feel it.
Because every time he comes by, he reacts and he puts like his little hands up. He's like, ah.
He's just excited to see him. I mean, he does stuff to protect him.
Yeah.
But it's all about the little things.
Yeah.
And that's really what we see in the Mandalorian and the Clone Wars is if you take the time and really establish things slowly, you're going to get it to a point where it just couldn't have been before if you were just trying to rush it into one format.
Right.
That has to deal with the movie format versus, an episodic plot. But I just think it's important to like use Din and Grogu as such an example for all these relationships because they literally cannot communicate with each other than body language.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe Grogu understands what he's saying. Maybe.
Like, clearly he doesn't know his colors.
Yeah. And then there's only one episode in which we know what Grogu is saying because Ahsoka basically she translates
Yeah.
through the Force. She feels what he's feeling and communicates that to him, and basically tells us stuff we already knew.
And the other things that we didn't, like his name.
Yeah.
And that he was at the Jedi Temple.
And their whole relationship, you don't have to question, right? It's like, why would Din want to protect us? Well, he had trauma as a child. He really is attached to this character, feels like he needs to take care of him. I mean, literally the pod he transfers him around is supposed to look like a baby carriage, right?
Yeah.
Grogu, he's just really affectionate, so we get that a lot.
Right.
And I think even when you move on to the other characters in family, like Star Wars does family so well because it's all about the little things. Jango and Boba Fett. I mean, he's constantly looking after his son when we see him, even in the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
Not the Clone Wars. I mean, even in
Attack of the Clones.
The Attack of the Clones, the movie, where they have the most atrocious interactions and relationships in all of Star Wars. That's like the only one that holds true and like makes sense to me.
Yeah, it's that father-son bond. Like, I hope we get more content about just like Jango Fett.
Me too.
Because in terms of like what's actually canon, there isn't much, and they kind of canonized was it Jaster or Real or whatever? There's like the Mandalorian War stuff that from Legends that's like it was like one of the things listed in the chain code of who had the armor before.
Oh yeah.
It was Jango and it was Jaster Mariel. So I think exploring that would be more interesting. Just to see, like, knowing that character would mean more for about Boba, just like getting that relationship. Because realistically, we only see them for, I don't know, like 30 minutes and then his head gets cut off.
Which, talk about an evocative moment in Star Wars, and talk about something that would be a motivation for a character to the end of his life, and still is.
Yeah.
I mean, Boba is constantly talking about his father, even when we see him in The Mandalorian.
Yep.
And that to me is just like, okay, obviously because of how they wrote backwards in Star Wars, you know, Darth Vader never talks about Luke's mother.
Yeah.
But there is no way that character, if they were to write that movie again based on how they wrote him in the prequels, wouldn't be like, oh, you have your mother's eyes or something like that. That's a very consistent thing that happens in fantasy, which Star Wars is science fantasy. So, you know, it's, oh, well, I haven't seen you. I never saw you even when you were your baby, but I can tell you're my child just because you have your mother's eyes, your mother's nose. Like,
yeah.
Where it's, we get those long lasting impressions where it's like, when you look at like Anakin and Shmi, his mother, that relationship, in terms of Anakin, other than Obi-Wan, is the only relationship that makes sense because literally from the time he is a child, 9 years old, to when he is 19, he's constantly thinking about his mother. He still has a connection with his mother through the Force.
Yeah. And through that, I feel like that's like the best example of why the Jedi aren't supposed to form attachments, is because of that. That's why he murdered all those Tusken Raiders. Like,
oh yeah,
like I think like that's a really good example of why in the just in the movies.
Yeah, and they start incorporating. It's kind of like when we were talking about music, like they're incorporating a lot of like the dark Darth Vader sounds.
Yeah,
like translate with him throughout those movies. Like that is his tipping point. Like we pretty much know that is the tipping point for him. And I do think that's really interesting for like what we're talking about with the Jedi. Like as much as we can be like, oh, it's so dumb for them to not be able to form attachments. Like Anakin is the poster child for why you do that.
Yeah. But at the same time, you can also just make the argument that the Jedi are losing their way and they aren't doing enough.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, but seriously, like that's the thing with Shmi. That's the only time when Anakin really does stuff. I'm not questioning it at all. I'm like, oh yeah, if someone was doing that to my mother, and I had the power to stop it, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
That's having empathy. That's being a human being. It's not being like, oh, well, it's not their fault. It's their gods and all this stuff. Like the average human being is not going to think like that.
No.
Especially one who's 19 and
right.
The most powerful duelist, force user,
mid 2000s edge,
and mid 2000s edge, because God, the prequels.
uh, but yeah, I think that relationship, even like what I like about the Clone Wars cartoon is that they even show during the Mortis arc that he's still traumatized by that. Like when he sees one of them as like his mother in a vision,
Yeah,
and it's
absolutely.
and that like kind of motivates him for that bit because that he really starts losing his shit basically.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing. Is like if you can take a relationship and just keep bringing it back up. I mean that's what we see with Obi-Wan
Yeah,
and Rebels. I mean he still thinks about Maul. He still thinks about Anakin, even
yeah,
when he's literally old Ben. And
exactly,
that's the thing. It's like you have to have that time to really flesh out what a character is going to be about. And sometimes you might not be able to, like the Ghost Crew having a found family, but the whole show is based around that relationship.
exactly.
I mean, it's all about them protecting each other, working for each other, trying to keep each other safe, thinking about each other's motives. It's very a character driven plot, whereas like the sequels, the Clone Wars cartoons, the prequels are very like plot driven. They're
Yeah,
very much about
it's
okay,
a
this
large
has to
scale
happen
war.
and
It's
when.
political. It's about like they're driven by these things, and then you just get the arcs within this major story.
Hmm.
Like we have the main characters, but the reason why everything around them is happening is mostly out of their control.
Yeah, absolutely. Which I really like,
Yeah,
the Ghost Crew and Canon and Hera and all that stuff. But if we're talking relationships, man, I still got like my nod definitely is going to the Mandalorian with Din and Grogu, just because
yeah,
they did so much with literally essentially no dialogue.
yeah,
They can't have dialogue between each other. The only thing they have is actions and how what Din says to him.
right. Like it's done so well in that show. It's literally just like the puppetry is so good, and it just shows, and it's like it's literally his motivation throughout the entirety of the show,
Oh yeah.
and that's like
I mean,
makes it
watching
great.
it, I literally my girlfriend when we watched The Mandalorian both seasons, she's just like everything she would say at least once a episode. Oh no, Baby Yoda! Yay, but Baby Yoda! Oh, the baby! Oh, the it's like
Babe,
oh the mom, father, and dad. It's like you're attached to that character too, and you feel like you want. Yeah, look at him. He's so cute.
he's
Other than how
adorable.
creepy he is sometimes, you just want to. It's a character you want to have no harm come to, and it's really good for a plot device. But it also you're never questioning it with Dan. You're just like,
Yeah,
yep, I know how he feels right now.
and it's also like what I really like they established the relationship is that they do kind of have each other's back, even though they can't. Neither of them can really rely on it.
Hmm.
But there's multiple times in the show where Din definitely would have died if it weren't for Grogu, and vice versa.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I think you can even extend that to Din would have suffered a psychological death if it wasn't for Grogu because he feels like
Yeah,
it feels like hey, this is his point of redemption.
right.
Like he will be a whole new person, and he becomes a whole new person because of Grogu. And I
Yeah,
really just think that's a really interesting thing when you're looking at like what it means to be father and son.
yeah,
Like a lot of fathers, that's what they say. It's like my life changed and I thought about the world in a much different way. And
right.
that's exactly what we see with that. So that's the thing. We'll kind of transition into friendships, but that's the thing when you kind of look at all three of these type of relationship types. You got romance, family, and friendships. Family is one of the strongest, just because it seems like in Star Wars they really have a handle on what it means to be family, what it means to be father and son, what it means
Yeah,
to be mother and son. Like they really get at the essence of that feeling and really drive that in. Whereas I think romance, it's all about subtlety.
yeah,
And family, it's just like you can be blunt, you can just get in there. I mean, you don't have to, as we saw with Din and Grogu. It's like they don't even have dialogue, and you
yeah,
get into that. But one of the things is like with the friendships in Star Wars that we start looking at, like that is where that's a knock that's out of the park. I mean, the friendships in Star Wars are super real. you're always getting to know these characters and who they are through their friendships and what they feel like. I mean, Han and Chewie,
Yep.
again, they have literally no, it's one sided dialogue again, like Din and Grogu, but you know how they're feeling all the time. There's this sense that, Han is growing and he uses Chewie as kind of this relay point.
Yeah.
And they just kept adding more and more because they kept understanding what that meant. I mean, this was the thing they did before. I mean, in the sequels, they kill off Han and not Chewie, but
Yeah.
in Legends, they killed off Chewie and not Han, and that was one of the things he had to live with. Is like, this is my best friend,
Yeah.
and it was always canonically that he freed him from being a slave, but they never really said how he did that
Yeah.
and why he had a life bond.
I
But
really
Han
like
never
that
saw it as that.
actually in Solo. I really
Oh,
like
it's one
that
of the best parts of Solo.
because for some dumb reason he speaks Shriwook.
Yeah,
Like,
for no reason. But you know what? I didn't really question it. Maybe it's just because I'm a huge ass Star Wars nerd, and I was like, okay, it has to happen. They
yeah.
can't just be like, oh, well, I'm gonna take you, and then half the movie's about me learning your language.
Yeah.
It was like he
Well, what
just
I
straight
love
up
is that
went in
after
there.
he speaks to him in Shriwook, he never speaks it again.
Well,
He's,
he literally says, "There's like I hurt my throat. I can't do that," which is
yeah.
true. That's literally canonical. Like before they did all that stuff, when they released some of the first information about Chewie, it's like, oh, well, they speak in this guttural language that humans can't replicate because it would literally shred their vocal cords.
Yeah.
And as much as that is an aside, it's so interesting to see Han in that way because sometimes he can seem like this larger than life character, but it's his relationships that ground him. And we're kind of going full circle here, back to the Leia thing. It's the relationships Han has that makes him feel human, makes him feel like he has actual feelings and not just some gruff, tough guy who moves along the plot and tells witty jokes. No, he's he's a friend. He's a lover. He
Yeah.
cares about people. He cares about Luke. He cares about Chewie. He may not believe the same things you believe, but if you believe them, he's going to stick with you.
Yeah. Also, there's this really weird moment in The Force Awakens when after Han dies, and then it's Chewbacca and Rey on the Millennium Falcon. They get off, and then Rey's the one that hugs Leia and not Chewbacca, and I just feel like that's like
That really was a damaging moment for me.
Yeah.
Um, and that might be one of the things that kind of ruined the sequels for me was how they handled Chewie's death. Um, if you don't know a lot about the more extended canon or yeah, it's more of just like outer canon at this point of Star Wars. The Wookiees are extremely emotional creatures who the people like if their mate dies, they're pretty much gonna die. Like they will not
Yeah.
eat. And think about like how attached dogs get to people. And I don't want to compare the Wookiees to that because they are very complex, intelligent creatures. But they will literally just cease to eat, taking care of themselves, doing all that stuff. And that is literally what I was like. They're giving no space for Chewie to grieve.
Yeah.
They just kind of threw him to the side. It was kind of like the medal thing in the original trilogies. He didn't get a medal. And in the sequels, he doesn't get time to grieve his best friend who saved his life,
Yeah.
who gave him everything, who was always by his side, who was loyal to him to a T. And that that was a relationship they probably should have never messed with
Yeah.
and tried to move in my eyes, but I'm kind of a sequels hater. And that's one of the reasons why I do like the sequels for a lot of reasons, but they really damaged a lot of relationships. Same with the
Yeah.
Han and Leia stuff.
Yeah. I just think that shot is the weirdest thing because I'm like, you have known him for like 4 days.
Exactly.
And I was like, you have known Chewbacca for at least like 2 decades.
I know. And that's what I think about. It's like I literally cannot imagine. So Charlie and I we've known each other since we were little. We were in
Yeah.
kindergarten. I literally cannot imagine like having a lifelong friend. I cannot imagine just being like someone just like, oh, my grief is worse than you, which I don't want to get into the whole my
Yeah.
heart is worse than yours and all that stuff, but like I'd be pissed. I'd be like, hold on, shut the fuck up. Like,
Yeah.
if you give me my moment for a minute, you can have yours too. Like, and I feel like on the screen, that's what we needed. And that would have been really powerful, is to see like how much Chewie was reacting. I remember Chewie's scream, because I saw it in theaters. I remember Chewie's scream
Yeah.
after that when he saw Han die. I was like, that my heart dropped. And then it's gone. They just take that
Yeah.
emotion. You're like, all right, we've done it.
It
Don't
happened.
worry
It's
about it.
over. And you're like, what?
I'm like, oh my fucking god. I was expecting Chewie to come out of here and just like, he's got
Yo, he should have ripped
his
some arms
cross blast.
off.
That's what I'm saying. He's got his cross blaster. He starts blowing shit up.
Yeah.
I would have been expected he goes full suicidal, and not like he's gonna kill himself, but like he's gonna sacrifice himself on a mission.
I'm glad that Kylo at least gets injured because of that, though.
Yeah, dude. He should have got an arm ripped off straight
Yeah.
up.
That would be actually way more interesting. But anyway, here's your fun fact about Wookiee noises: is that they're animal vocalizations, including lion, walrus, bear, and badgers.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
how they sound designed that.
Yeah, Star Wars tweeted that out earlier this week, so I just thought I'd throw it in since we were talking about Chewbacca.
Yeah, and I mean even Luke and Han, like that was such a sacred relationship to me, because they slowly developed that, where it's like these characters who are at odds because they have different ideological views, and then they start to have this bond because they've been together. But then in the last movie, The Empire Strikes Back, right? Return of the Jedi. Sorry, my brain is all over the place.
Don't worry.
The last movie of the original trilogy, Return of the Jedi, we just get to see their relationship in full bloom, where they're just like, "Hey, buddy, how are you doing?" It's so friend, like it's like, oh yeah, it's not about we have different ideological views anymore. It's just like, you're my friend. I've been through so much with you, and it's so organic. And that's kind of what is missing in a lot of the relationships we see in Star Wars. Is they just don't give it time. They throw so many characters at you and do absolutely nothing with almost half of them. And the ones that are the most impactful, you're looking at Han and Chewie, Luke and Han and Leia, Ahsoka and Anakin and Padme in the Clone Wars, Anakin and Obi-Wan. They have the time to really, Din and Grogu, they have the time to develop that organically. And no matter what else is in the background, you don't really give a shit, because those are the focal points. Those are the things you get attached to. You get attached to the characters and their relationship.
Right.
And when it really fails, that's when they try to rush things along.
Yeah. I really like the sequel characters. The writing doesn't support their relationships really existing.
Yeah, I mean, I think
it feels like they just exist together, but not because of they want to ever hang out or do anything, except for Poe and Finn.
Poe and Finn, which is some gay baiting bullshit. There was so much like near sexual tension with these guys, or you can just argue it was a hard ass bromance
with the boys.
Yeah, dude, they were like that, and I really enjoyed their relationship because it was really organic. Again, that was something we saw from literally the first movie, right?
Yeah. Well, I love that because they set the tone so immediately. He literally walks in and he's like talking to another stormtrooper. He's like, "I'm getting the fuck out of here, dude!" Like,
yeah, let's go. Come on.
It's like, you can fly, right? It's like, I can't.
Man, Finn and Poe, that was a great one. Actually, this is a controversial one, and some people might not agree. I think in the first two movies, Finn and Rey, was actually really organic, really made sense, and then they kind of ditched it in the last movie just to focus on the plot. And that's kind of what I was looking for, because for me, just from what we see in Finn in the first one, like I literally imagined a scenario after watching that where Rey and Finn were going to become Jedi.
Yeah.
That was an inseparable thought in my mind.
Yeah.
It was those two, they were bound together in their arc, which they were not in the way I expected, and not in the way that was the most satisfying to me.
Yeah.
But everything else around that, all those other relationships were so mediocre.
Yeah.
And people are hugging and feeling sorry for each other, and they've only known each other for 4 days, 2 years.
Yeah.
And we don't really get screen time with them.
Yeah. I will say there was one thing I really liked about The Rise of Skywalker, and it's just the fact that the way that the movie kicks off, I really enjoy. With like I like it because they're doing like the light speed skipping, which is cool, and they do the spy thing, which is that's fun. But what I really like is that it feels like, oh, this is the crew now, like finally.
Yeah, finally we get that unity that we really expect, and I mean, as we're talking about, 90% of these relationships are this unified crew of people
Yep.
where
And
oh, you're good. Start trying.
oh, I was just gonna say, but like the issue with those movies is like we almost never get that in those movies, and that's like one of their biggest flaws, is because it's like they're all likable characters. Like there's no like fundamental issues with the characters per se. Like, well, for the most part,
It's
but
just how
like
they use them.
yeah,
I mean,
anyway,
that's most people's fundamental gripe about the sequels is how they treated Finn, which not even getting into the politics of them, catering towards China and cutting out a black actor. Actually, get into the politics of that. That's fucked up as shit. And
yeah,
really
that's bad.
wasting a character who was the most impactful to me. I
He
honestly,
literally has the most interesting backstory, just on a pure
yeah. Oh
basis
my
of like,
god,
oh,
he's
interesting
so
plot.
like
What an
literally,
idea,
guy gets abducted, is made into a stormtrooper, hates it, meets a Jedi, is it in this Jedi arc, and then they just waste him when he meets another person who had the exact same story. And it
right?
was like, okay, but why isn't this character, he's getting a better life, but why isn't he growing physically?
Yeah,
He's no longer as fearful in the second movie. And then he suddenly ditches all his flaws, but just has no screen time in the last movie. I mean, they just made him to cut him out, which is a whole other thing.
yeah. And it sucks because John Boyega does a really good job as an actor too.
Oh
Like,
yeah, and so does Daisy Ridley. Like,
yeah,
it was just how they portrayed those characters. And
yeah,
maybe that's part of like what we like the most about the Clone Wars cartoons.
yeah,
When we look at Anakin and Obi-Wan and Anakin and Ahsoka, is like, yeah, they have the time. Um, but also just the writing is
right,
just a league of its own. No matter how those characters are portrayed, like literally some people hate the original voice for Ahsoka
yeah,
when she was young. Um, which for me, I can't relate. Like I thought it was very believable.
yeah,
But from the very first moment, even with relatively debated bad acting, it's still good. You
yeah,
have to be able to write a character well. You have to be able to create a character that is impactful and has good relationships. And that's exactly what Charlie was just saying. And I think is maybe can be the point of this entire episode, right? I think what you said is a great sum up. We have these characters, they're likable. They don't have that many like flaws in terms of like why wouldn't I like this character?
yeah.
Characters
Like
should have flaws. We know that. But the
yeah,
thing is you have to use them in a way that is evocative and emotional
yeah,
and grounded in your world. And that's the problem with really the sequels and the prequels is we have a lot of waste. We have a lot of characters who don't go where they should be. And that's just because of how you wrote them, not because of how they're portrayed or how they're acted or who you had hired or how much production you put into this. You look
right,
at early Clone Wars, which doesn't have that much cartoon production animation, and you still know how Anakin and Obi-Wan feel about each other. There's the
right,
dialogue, the situations, the actions. Anakin and Ahsoka, you never question that. And that is like one of the most pure relationships. And so when Anakin and Obi-Wan have their friendship severed, that's a hard one. But when Ahsoka leaves Anakin,
yep,
that is one of the most impactful moments in Star Wars because you know the emotions. You don't need
yeah,
dialogue. You can mute it and just how they are animated, just how the situations are wrote, you know how they're feeling and what they're about to say.
exactly. Also, slightly off topic. I think you did a really good job summarizing this. Star Wars tweeted out this image on Twitter. I'm just gonna drop it in the Twitch chat. There it is. But they tweeted that out, and it's as Force Ghost Kanan with Hera,
Oh, that's so cool.
and I'm like, I didn't think about that, but I guess that's canon. I guess I don't know. It's
Wow.
cool. I really like the art, but
Yeah,
I
I
thought
like
I'd
Force
throw that in.
Canon. That's cool. Yeah, and that's one of the things. It's like what we are just talking about, like this relationship lasts so long
Yeah.
And that's what, like, literally, that is the thing about Star Wars and the Force that is so powerful. You could literally kill a character and still have dialogue with them.
Yep.
Luke and Yoda. Those were
Exactly.
actually some of the most powerful moments in the sequels because those characters, they're very sacred. They have this relationship that's very long lasting.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you could argue if that was Obi-Wan talking to him during all this old Ben,
Yeah.
that also could have been very powerful. But you gotta build the relationships through time and then give them situations in which they matter, in which
Exactly.
friendships matter. And that's what we saw with Canon Hera. Like
Yeah.
they were using their relationship in the writing. It wasn't just like an aside to a plot. The characters existed in this world. And there were so many there are characters you could really fall in love with and want to be on their team, want to travel the world, travel the galaxy with.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah.
I think that I think that's
I think we
everything.
really hit everything. I think that's everything, and I think we inadvertently got to a point we didn't know we were making. So
Yeah,
I
which
think
is
that's a good
good.
way to end an episode.
It's like we were like, I don't know what they want. They're like, it's like when you were given an assignment and they're like, I have no idea what the teacher wants me to write. This is stupid. And then we're just
And you
like,
figure it out.
and then you're like halfway through and you're like, and then, like, oh, this is good paper.
Yeah. Oh man, relationships and Star Wars, man. Like I said, I think this is a really important one to talk about for a lot of the reasons we just said, and I just hope in the future, we really build on that stuff. We really like
Agreed.
even the newest relationships we've got in Star Wars have been phenomenal. Din and
Yeah.
Grogu, in any of the characters. I mean, I really want to see where, I can't remember the planet, but it's where they have the shrimp, and their Din
Yeah.
basically has that little romance where he almost considers taking his helmet off for this woman.
Yeah.
I really want to see where that goes. I really want them to establish and use all the stuff they put in here because it's so cool. I mean, Rogue One.
Yes.
Those
We didn't even
relationships.
talk about that. That's such a good.
Yeah,
They
but we're
just,
gonna talk about Rogue One soon. We have to. I mean, with
yeah.
the Andor show coming out, like again, another. If you want to watch a movie that has strong relationships, watch that. I
Yeah.
mean, you've got brothers in there. You've got romance. You've got general conflict in a crew.
You have also one of the best action sequences in all of Star Wars. One of the best, like, space battles, too.
What are you saying is the best action scene in that movie?
The hallway.
Hallway. Yeah, the hallway is really good. Um, I mean, I think one of the most emotional moments in all of Star Wars is the I'm one of the Force. The Force is one with me.
Agreed. That's like one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. All right, well, Charlie, I think that's all we got to say.
I'd say so. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Appreciate Berg coming out, being the guy. And if you enjoyed the show, please share it with your friends. Share it with your friends, your family, anyone you know that likes Star Wars. Share it with them. Share your love of the show. Share your love of Star Wars. And yeah, you can follow us on Twitter at ORR Show. And the show goes up on several podcast services. Just search Outer Rim Radio. Look for a nice new logo made by T-Rex Harris. And yeah, I think that covers it up. We also have merch on Redbubble as well, which I always link down in the description below. So yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Bye, guys.
Bye.